Hello everybody, welcome along once again to another edition of the Rebel White Ball. I think it was somebody was saying during the week, or this saying was attributed to some individual, that there are decades in history when nothing happens, and then there are weeks when decades happen. And my God, that has been the case since the Putin decided that he needed to take out the Ukrainians. And since then, like the whole our whole understanding, if you like, of the planet has changed considerably. We're talking about food shortages, fuel shortages, maternity hospitals being bombed. I mean, it's beyond awful, to be quite honest about it. And then I saw something last weekend that the government were talking about compulsory tillage orders. And my God, for those people who can, I suppose, whose history knowledge extends back to the Second World War, will know all about that. And then a lot of the talk this week has been about fuel prices. Amazing that we spent past 2 years talking about COVID figures. Now we seem to be completely preoccupied with fuel prices. And it would appear that the greatest thumbs down for quite a while should be attributed to those people who run the fuel stations around the country. Now, a lot of these are consortiums that have, they really control the price of fuel in this country. But when the government yesterday, or whenever they did announce that they were subsidising, or they were not subsidising, they were going to reduce their tax take, I presume, on fuel, apparently that a number of these outlets decided yesterday to up the prices so that maybe they could drop them today. And if that be the case, like if we could organise, or if it could be organised, that these stations should be boycotted, because I think that's what a lot of people are really annoyed about, all of that kind of carry on. Anyway, thankfully, like everything else, we have sport to take our minds off a lot of what's happening in the world. And it's another big weekend coming up. We have the usual mix of Gaelic games, Camogie, ladies football, rugby, soccer, golf, and probably there are numerous other sporting events happening that keep people entertained, keep their minds well, and maybe keep serve a distraction for what's really happening in the so-called outside world. In terms of the National Hurling League is on a break this weekend, but after last week's series of matches, I suppose the story is Cork's ascendancy continues, and where are Limerick in the greater scheme of all this? They drew with Clare last week. They play one more match next week against Offaly, which is a glorified challenge game. They will win that, and then the next time they hit town in a competitive match when they come to Cork on Easter Sunday. And I think that opening match is going to tell so much about the All-Ireland series. Are Limerick really gone back? And can Cork, if you like, maintain the great progress they've been making? Probably not alone. Well, I suppose this year and maybe last year as well, to be fair to them. But this is football weekend, and my God, we're talking about, if we're concentrating on Cork, we're going to talk about the Alliance Division 2, and what an incredible competition it is, both at the top and at the bottom where Cork are involved. Two massive games this weekend that will have a big say in who goes down. It's nothing about anything else, only who goes down. On Saturday evening at 5 o'clock, Offaly travelled down to take on the Moormen. Now, whether the Kilcoo lads are back in that camp or not, I don't know. And then on Saturday, Cork go to Portalchin in County Meath. And mention of Portalchin, maybe we're going to be talking here about the Tailteann Cup. But interestingly, last week that the match between Galway and Offaly, which was postponed a couple of weeks ago because of the inclement weather conditions, was played last Sunday, and surprisingly enough, not that Galway won it, but that Offaly were only 4 points behind at the end. So at the bottom of Division 2, you have three teams, Cork, Down and Offaly, all on 1 point. And incredibly, the point difference, minus 25 for Offaly, minus 24 for Down, and minus 23 for Cork. It's absolutely so tight and so on. So after this game on Sunday, then the following Sunday, Down come to Cork, and after that it's Cork to Offaly. And if there was ever a saying that it's in Cork's hands, I think the Cork team will be selected tomorrow night. And some talk, of course, has accrued over the past while about the number of injuries that I suppose, are part of the Cork panel. I think there's about 15 players at this stage, if not more, maybe up to 17 that are injured. I don't know whether one or two of them will come back. Hopefully Brian Hurley will. There'll be change of goalkeeper as well, because Chris Kelly got injured the last day, so did Sean Meehan. So Micheál Martin, I presume, would be back in goal. The other games in Division 1, for those of you that are fans of this football league, is in Division 1, and it's a big weekend as well. Maybe at the bottom there again, more at the top. The big game down in Trwb on Saturday night is going to be Kerry and Mayo, the place to be packed. Will it have a big say on the outcome of Sam, because that's what those counties are on about? I'm not too sure, but the games that you should be keeping an eye on is the Tyrone play Dublin on Sunday afternoon, and I think on Saturday evening as well we have Kildare playing Armagh. Now if Kildare won and if Tyrone won, it means that Dublin will be down in Division 2 next year, and my God, 2 years ago if you said something like that, I'd imagine you'd be whipped away somewhere fairly lively. In Division 3, keep an eye on that as well, because our near neighbours in Limerick, would you believe, are on top of that division. Now we've talked about Clare, the progress they've made, but Limerick likewise, they've won 3 out of their 4 matches, but this weekend it's a huge one against Westmeath, and if Limerick were to get promoted into Division 2, it would be massive progress for them. In terms of school games, well, there's one big one on at All Ireland level, and that's the All Ireland Post Primary School Senior D football final for the Brother Ignatius Rice Cup. And will it be Fintan Finner, the Beary captain, that will be taking it back into the division? Well, we'll know sometime around 3:30 on Saturday afternoon, because at 2 o'clock the Beary school from, you know where it is, take on Our Lady's Secondary School from Belmullah, right up on the top of Mayo, and it takes place around Innocent St. Joseph's, Stewart Bearfield, which is a grand venue for it, and thankfully it was sorted out early during the week. Mentioning Fintan Finner, their team captain from Beara, I think he actually played a senior football game for Cork sometime earlier this year. He was also part of the Cork under 20 panel, but he was injured the last day and he only came on in the last 20 minutes, and he made a big difference in their victory. And they were, Beara got over Ballybay Community School from Monaghan by 2 points, and that the Westport School, like all Mayo schools, would be well drilled. They're a good football side, and they had a big win in the semi-final over Forban, who've been in, Forban have been one of the leading schools at this level in Leinster. So I think this is going to be another really close game, of what an incredible achievement it would be if an All-Ireland title was to head back into the Beara division. To be good news for the school, obviously, and for their clubs around the place. And well done to people have come on board with sponsorship and all of that, and to the teachers and staff who support the games in the school. And a lot of credit in a lot of these situations goes down to school management. They have different views about it, but thankfully in Beara Community School, I'm saying some school managements have different views about where Gaelic games stand in their scheme of things. Anyway, that's that. The best of luck to those Beara footballers. It's a big weekend for Cork Camogie as well. They've been doing really well this year, and as they always do, to be fair about it. And on Saturday they played in the Division 1 League. Cork played their third game after facile victories, if you like, over Clare and Limerick. They now take on Kilkenny, and that's the deciding game really. It's on in Portlakeeve, throw in at 2 o'clock on Saturday. Kilkenny have also beaten Limerick and Clare, but not by as much as Cork, so I expect Cork to advance there. And the Division 2 team, which plays in the All-Ireland Intermediate Championship, they play also on Saturday, taking on Derry, and they lost their first game to Wexford, wasn't it? Won the next day out against Kildare. This is a real competitive league, good few teams in it, but I think Cork at home will be fancy to advance there. And the Cork minor team then on Sunday, they take on Waterford at 2 o'clock, and that's in the All-Ireland quarter-final, and after victories over Galway, I think, and Dublin, again I think that there's a huge chance here that Cork, or a huge, I suppose, possibility, if you like, that Cork will emerge victorious in all three. Ladies football, well, for the moment in inter-county, they're out of the league, Cork, but their victory last week over Waterford means that they're going to maintain their Division 1 status. I think they play Waterford in the Munster Championship now a number of weeks' time. And look, we expect Cork to go all the way and qualify for the All-Ireland quarter-finals, where the two big teams are meeting in Dublin. And it wasn't incredible last week, the massive crowd that turned up in Port Tolchin as it was for the Meath Dublin game, that Dublin won by a single point. But what's on this weekend is the O'Connor Cup, and all the finals of the third level ladies football competitions on, and the top one is the O'Connor Cup. Semi-finals are on Friday. It's hosted by UCD, and at 1 o'clock UCC, which will obviously have a number of Cork players will be playing UCD. And then the 3 o'clock semi-final, you'll have UL versus NUIG from NUI Galway, or NUIG, depends what we want to pronounce, and a number of Cork players involved there as well. So it would be nice if, you know, I think that whoever will, well, unless UCD, I don't think they have Cork players. The final of that takes place on Saturday, and then I think the third grade competition is called the Moynihan Cup. MTU Cork campus are in the final of that on Friday, where they take on Letterkenny IT. So that's going to be another opportunity for a bit of silverware to come to Cork. Moving to soccer, and I don't know, where do you start here? Well, I suppose first of all, the fact that yesterday the FAI announced that Stephen Kinney is going to hold on to his job. Was it ever in doubt? I doubt it. And he will be there now until after the Euros, which will be played in 2024. And look, from what we've seen so far, it would appear that that is the correct and good appointment. The demise of Manchester United continues after their disastrous showing last week. We'll have to see how they'll get on in the Premier League. And mentioning the Premier, we'll see. We'll talk about the Premier League, but in the Champions Cup, the big stories this week is that Liverpool, despite being beaten by Nice, they had enough from the first game to get through to the quarterfinals, and Man City drew last night, and again they're gone through to the quarterfinals. So doing well there, the English clubs. But I suppose the big story has to be about Chelsea, in that, remember we were telling you last week that Roman Abramovich, who is one of Putin's bios, and one of the wealthiest people on the planet, owner of Chelsea since 2003, he decided to jump ship last week. Well, he thought he was jumping ship by selling the club. Well, it would appear now that he's been sanctioned by the British government, which means he can sell the club. They've been granted a licence to continue on in the league, but this is really bad news for Chelsea fans, bad news for, well, don't worry too much about him, but Abramovich, I presume he'll survive it. Anyway, there's 2 matches on tonight. Leeds United, who were in a bit of free fall themselves, take on Aston Villa, and actually Norwich play Chelsea. So it'll be interesting to know how that game will go, but strange times in it. And we have a few Chelsea fans, I presume, around the spot. Whether they're Putin supporters, we hope not. Then on Saturday, Liverpool's drive to win 4 trophies continues. When they take on Brighton, and Manchester United play Spurs. And this I was going to say it is a defining game, but with Spurs you never know. After their massive performance where they beat Everton, was it 5-0? Now it's Manchester United. It's probably the best time for Man United to play Spurs after a big win, because normally they collapse a bit after that. So that's our soccer look. Yes, it's not League of Ireland, and in Division 1, where we told you we have the 9 teams, 2 of them from Cork. Well, they meet this weekend. The first derby goes on Friday night at 7:45, and that's Cork City versus Cove. And Cork City, who had a big win over Bray Wanderers the first day out, didn't score a goal against Galway and lost 1-0. Last week against Longford, it was 0-0, so 2 games without a goal, but they should be still too good for Cove Ramblers, who were beaten in their first game. They've only 2 matches played. They were beaten 3-2 by Wexford, and they drew last week against Treaty United. Probably would be considered a good enough result, but Cork City certainly would be so disappointed if they weren't to win that particular match. Moving to rugby, and this is the big weekend in terms of, you know, obviously all rugby fans, but any Irish person, if they never followed rugby, this is the one match they like to follow, or they like to watch, and that's the meeting with the great old neighbours in Twickenham. And On Saturday, it's a bit unusual in that it's on at a 4:45 and England will be the underdogs. That doesn't happen too often when anybody travels to Twickenham other than maybe the All Blacks. The English side would be considered favourites, but they have been obviously haven't been playing that well, and their loss to Wales really I suppose brought something into focus, and Ireland have been doing really well. I know that they were beaten by France, but I think that Ireland have a really good chance here in this one. And the other matches that are on, Wales are taking on France. I think that game goes on Friday night, and then Italy plays Scotland, and this is round 4 of the Six Nations. The round 5 takes place next weekend, and in that match Ireland will be playing Scotland at home. But while all that is happening, this famous United Rugby Championship is going ahead, and Munster, after their win last week, they departed for South Africa because there was obviously with different altitudes they needed as much time as possible out there to acclimatise, and they have to play 2 matches this Saturday and the following Saturday. These were the games, you may remember, that was cancelled because of the outbreak of the Omicron variant of the COVID virus, and all of what that led to. But anyway, they're playing the Bulls, are they're known as, on Saturday, and that game goes on at around 2 o'clock. So that'll be just finished before the Ireland game will start, and the Munster team will obviously be watching with interest again to know what side they will name, and then the following week they will play the other South African franchise, the Lions. These 2 teams, there are 16 teams in this particular championship, and the Bulls are in 11th place and the Lions are in 14th, and Munster are just behind Leinster and Ulster in that particular championship. So I'm not too sure what this is, kind of a first experience, I suppose, for Munster, if you like, travelling down to South Africa. It's at short notice. How that game go will be interesting, but in terms of ability and the way the results of matches have gone, certainly Munster are a far better team. In golf, well, first of all, in the Challenge Tour, that we follow the fortunes of Kinsale and John Murphy. They're on a 2-week break this week, I think, and next week. But the big PGA Tour is the Players' Championship, and even though it's not considered major, this is the wealthiest golf championship in the world. $20 million, just think about that for a second. And for the players that take part in it, finishing in the top 20, top 30, there's bucks all over the place, and the winner of this will end up with 3.6 million. So I presume that he won't have to be driving around from Scott to Glentown to see where is the cheapest petrol to put in his punto. The reigning champion is Justin Thomas. Seemingly in the history of this championship, no reigning championship has ever won it. So that'll be for those of you that are golfing fans. Seamus Power is playing, and the US Masters, which is the one that they really want to play in, you have to be in the top 50. At the moment, Seamus is number 50. He started the year so well, slipped a little bit of late, and himself and McIlroy and Shane Lowry will be the Irish entrance in it. So that's basically it. I know that there are a multitude of other sports that people follow, and we follow them to a degree, but they are probably the main ones. The big wish, of course, is that that Cork would get something out of that match when they travel to Port Tolchin on Sunday. So until the next time, as we always say, mind yourself and mind each other.